It's me, the little voice in your stomach. And as you can tell by my musical selection, I have impeccable taste. So I won't settle for anything but the most tasty snack. All natural Alberto beef jerky. It's lean beef, slow cooked, and seasoned to perfection. All natural and all delicious. So listen to the little voice in your stomach. Indulge my great taste and feed me some all natural Alberto beef jerky. Alberto beef jerky. You get out what you put in.
Refers to Alberto's all-natural line of beef jerkies. Minimally processed, no artificial ingredients.
This is the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
I'm Stephen A. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the latest edition of the Stephen A. Smith Show, coming at you as I love to do every weekday over the airways of ESPN Radio. That's 710 ESPN LA. That's 98.7 FM New York City. And, of course, nationwide over the airways of ESPN Radio. Sirius XM, Channel 80. Number to call up, as always, is 866-729-ESPN. That's 866-729-3776. Want to say happy birthday to you. To the one and only Irvin Magic Johnson, born. That would be yesterday, by the way, August 14th. So it's happy belated birthday, August 14th, 1959. 58 years of age. That is Irvin Magic Johnson. Happy belated birthday to the one and only, the Magic Man. Let's hope that Lonzo Ball and those boys delivered. Saw him last night at the NBA Rookie Symposium. Lonzo Ball was in attendance. We are definitely rooting for him. Let's see what he does this year. Also saw this man, Dennis Smith Jr., who the Knicks should have drafted, damn it. But they didn't do it. They got some French dude that none of us know, but that's a story neither for here nor there. We'll continue to talk about those kind of things, along with some other NFL items as the day progresses. But the story that's on my mind on this particular day is that of Ezekiel Elliott, because as you all know, today is the deadline for Ezekiel Elliott to appeal the decision handed down by Commissioner Roger Goodell as it pertains to Ezekiel Elliott's suspension. And apparently, ladies and gentlemen, this is a dicey subject. And this is an incredibly dicey show because to tackle this issue, I got to admit to you, it's one of the more difficult situations to address. I have to confess. Here we have an individual in Ezekiel Elliott who just got suspended for 6 games by Commissioner Roger Goodell. And Roger Goodell and the NFL basically have said they're attaching guilt to this man for all intents and purposes. They point to last July 17th, July 19th, July 21st. Over the span of those 3 specific days, there were 5 separate incidences that took place, according to the former girlfriend of Ezekiel Elliott, who alleges that he exacted domestic violence against her. Ezekiel Elliott has proclaimed his innocence. He said he is not guilty of what is alleged he has done. And apparently he, his father, and his supporters are on a warpath. Reading from an article today by Mr. Mike Florio. He says, as Ezekiel Elliott, I'm going to read from it because I don't want to interpret anything incorrectly. He said, quote, as Ezekiel Elliott representatives prepare to formally appeal his suspension and in turn to launch a PR campaign aimed at proving Elliott's innocence, bits and pieces of their case have begun to trickle out. On Monday, as in yesterday, some inflammatory excerpts emerged from documentation suggesting that Elliott will claim that, am I all right? Is it okay to say her name since it's in print? Miss Tiffany Thompson, that is her name, targeted him with false claims that he tried to end their relationship. After he tried to end their relationship. I'm sorry, not false claims that he tried, but false claims after he tried to end their relationship. Now the league's own website, NFL.com, is casting further doubt on Tiffany Thompson's credibility with a story regarding Elliott's efforts to assert that Thompson at one point last year was violating his rights. Via Ian Rappaport of NFL.com, Elliott filed a complaint with Frisco, Texas authorities on September 5th, alleging harassment against Thompson. Elliott claimed that he received, quote, 50-plus phone calls, end quote, from Thompson in a span of less than 7 hours, including multiple calls from a blocked number. The incident occurred only 2 days before authorities in Columbus, Ohio announced that Elliott would not be charged with domestic violence in response to accusations made by Thompson. Elliott also claimed that Thompson hacked into his email account, found phone numbers of other women that Elliott was, quote, messing around with, end quote, and called them. And then Mr. Florio writes, none of this means that Elliott did not commit domestic violence, but it helps paint the full picture of the relationship. More about that relationship is destined to emerge once Elliott files his appeal and if and when litigation ensues. Now, according to Adam Schefter, who showed up on First Take this morning, Ezekiel Elliott is pursuing this matter. He is proclaiming his innocence. But Adam Schefter does make the good point that unless Elliott and his representatives state something or present something to the NFL, who is not only judge, jury, and executioner, but they're also the appellate arm in all of this, unless Elliott presents something new to the National Football League, what is there to talk about? Because as Adam Schefter pointed out this morning on First Take with yours truly, along with my boy Mac Kellerman, along with the lovely Molly Curum, what Adam Schefter explained and articulated is that there's nothing that the NFL doesn't already know. So evidently the NFL knows about the 50-plus phone calls. Evidently the NFL knows about the hacking of the email. Evidently the NFL knows that this same girl who was, quote-unquote, messing around with Ezekiel Elliott happens to be white. And pointed that out. She pointed out her ethnicity and basically looked at him and said, I'm a white woman, you're a black man. How do you think that's going to look in the eyes of the public at large, while proclaiming she's going to ruin his career? Here's the question, ladies and gentlemen. Do you believe any of that should change the NFL's position one iota? I'm here to tell you it shouldn't. Let me be very, very clear. Someone calling you 50 times, hacking into your email, assuming all those things that Elliott is expected to proclaim are absolutely, positively true. What does that have to do with you hitting her, if indeed that's what you did? Now, you can grab somebody from hitting you. Grabbing them is one thing, hitting them is another. And if all we saw as evidence in terms of her marks was the fact that she was grabbed, then that's a different subject to tackle. But if the NFL is proclaiming, we believe it's more probable than not that you put your hands on this woman in a very violent fashion. Excuse me, I'm coughing a little bit. Regardless of what Ezekiel Elliott tries to proclaim, may or may not have transpired, there is simply no getting around the fact that Ezekiel Elliott found himself in a position to be accused of domestic violence on 5 separate occasions in a matter of 3 days. Now, you can feel what you want about a woman calling you 50-plus times in the span of 7 hours. I would say that's a bit unorthodox. Hacking into your emails? Not so much. I mean, hell hath no fury. And if somebody thinks you're lying and cheating and betraying them and what have you, and if evidence of it is in your emails, chances are you could possibly get hacked. The calling of the 50 times can be nauseating and excessive, but it doesn't justify domestic violence. And since that's the reality, I really don't see how Ezekiel Elliott gets out from under this. Do you? 866-729-ESPN is the number to call up. That's 866-729-3776. You are listening live to the Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio. Back with your calls and more in a minute.
Okay, keep your eyes closed.
Okay.
I want to show you my first ever painting.
All right.
Okay. Open your eyes.
Oh, that's a lot of colors and shades.
So be honest. What do you think?
Well, I like how if you switch to Geico, you could save hundreds of dollars on car insurance.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Here, why don't I hold your paintbrush while you call them?
Geico, because saving 15% or more on car insurance is always a great answer.
You're listening to the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
15 minutes past hour number one back here on the Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio. Before I get to the calls, in all fairness to Ezekiel Elliott, let's read what his statement was, because he posted a statement to his Twitter account on Friday night saying he was, quote, both surprised and disappointed, end quote, by the NFL's decision and that he strongly disagrees with the league's findings. He also said he was, quote, sincerely sorry, end quote, for the distraction and disruption he has caused for the Cowboys and his family. Here's the complete statement on Twitter from Ezekiel Elliott this past Friday. I am both surprised and disappointed by the NFL's decision today, and I strongly disagree with the league's findings. I recognize the distraction and disruption that all of this has caused my family, friends, teammates, the Dallas Cowboys organization, as well as my fans. For that, I am sincerely sorry. I admit that I am far from perfect, but I plan to continue to work very hard on and off the field to mature and earn a great opportunity that I have been given, end quote. I would have liked to have seen in that Twitter statement him saying, I'm innocent. I did not do this. This is BS. That would have been nice. You strongly disagreeing with the league's findings. That means you strongly disagree with the 6-game suspension. It doesn't mean you're innocent. You apologize for the distraction and the disruption to friends, teammates, Cowboy fans, everywhere, blah, blah, blah. That doesn't say you're innocent. And then you admitting that you are far from perfect, well, that's all of us. But that doesn't proclaim your innocence either. So there was nothing in Ezekiel Elliott's statement that's alluded to innocence. Am I wrong there? Did you get innocence from that, John? Did you get innocence from that, Nuno? I didn't sit there and say he said he was guilty now. But did you sense innocence from anything in that statement on Twitter from this past weekend? Anything? I mean, listen, ladies and gentlemen. And maybe I'm being a bit too excessive here. I get that. But if any woman accused me of hitting her, engaging in domestic violence, I'm going to hell off. I'm going off. I'm like, what? What did you say? Absolutely not. This is false. I'm innocent. But that's me. What about you, Lenny, in North Carolina? What's going on, big time? How are you?
What's going on, big brother? A long time no talk.
I'm good, man. Go ahead, buddy.
All right. Well, this whole thing, I'm a little torn on this whole thing.
So am I, man. So am I.
I have seen in instances with my own 4 eyes, because I wear glasses, with my own 4 eyes, I've seen guys that just walk past their girl and see their girl beat them up, and then the guy goes to jail, and he never touches the woman. I've seen that. So I'm torn with this because he is declaring he never did any of this stuff. And correct me if I'm wrong, didn't it come out that she tried to get people to lie for her and say that he did do this?
I'm not sure about that. I do know he's going to make the allegation and the assertion that she swore she would ruin his career, that his career was over, that he's going to proclaim she's a white woman. He's a black man. How do you think that's going to look for you? You know, those kind of things. Plus, he's bringing in account the 50 phone calls, the hacking of his emails, and all of that other stuff. So when you look at it from that perspective, it does get a bit dicey. But here's where, to me, he loses. 2 occasions, Lenny. Number one, I don't think you're telling the NFL anything they did not already know. And number two, and more importantly, why do you find yourself on 3 separate occasions in front of this girl with 5 separate different incidents? This is not one time where you were in front of her face and it's he said, she said. No, it's 3 separate days spanning 5 different occasions.
And once you get in trouble the first time, or once you have something happen one time, then that means you need to walk away.
I'm just saying, if she called you 50 times inside of 7 hours, right? Doesn't that mean it's 24 hours in a day? That means those 50 calls that took place in a span of 7 hours, that's one day. Why were you around to the other 2?
That's true, but I've been married to my white woman for 21 years.
Okay,
and she will call me 50 times in the span of an hour. So that's neither here nor there.
Right.
But I'm just wondering though, if it comes out that Zeke is telling the truth, and the NFL suspends him for 6 games, then they're suspending him basically. Are you thinking that they're suspending him for his other off-the-field actions?
Lenny, they swear they're not. But here's what I would say to you that Adam Schefter came on my show First Take this morning and said that I thought was incredibly powerful. He said the NFL looked at the evidence spanning a near 1-year investigation, and what they said, particularly in the aftermath of Ray Rice and Greg Hardy and Ray McDonald, they said, you know what, we're going to side with her and we'll take our chances as to whether or not you are right or you are wrong, because we've been burnt too many times trying to give you guys the benefit of the doubt, and we're not doing it anymore. That's what Adam Schefter said, and I think we all know that Adam Schefter would know a hell of a lot more than us about the NFL's mindset and thinking in this matter.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Adam and Mort would know more than any of us would know.
No question. The great Mort. Okay? I appreciate the call, Lenny. Thank you so much. Let's go to Kevin in New Jersey. You're live with Stephen A. What's going on, Kevin? How are you?
Stephen A., good morning. I want to quote something. Good afternoon. I want to quote something you said.
Sure.
There's no way in hell that O.J. would have gotten off with the evidence that they had. And that applies to Ezekiel Elliott.
If I was on a jury, yes.
If you were on a jury.
Yes.
You read the other day, I believe it was last week, that you read all the charges that was pinned up against them.
It was Friday. I read it Friday. Yes.
Yeah. How many times you've been arrested? The pictures. They don't lie. Now, he should be suspended. There's no doubt in my mind he did.
I agree with you. I agree.
Listen, I'm a black man, and I'm not saying this is a black or white issue. Listen, I'm a black man, and I'm telling you, he should definitely be suspended from what Stephen A. Smith has read on the show last Friday.
I read it. I had the report right in front of me, and I read it to y'all verbatim.
And here's the thing. This just didn't happen those times. This man needs help. He should be suspended for those 6 games, and within those 6 games, he needs counseling. And this is, I'm sorry to say, but it is. This is the problem. And I'm glad that the NFL suspended him for 6 games.
Let me say this to you, Kevin. I think he deserves the 6 games, but I'm not glad about it. Let me explain why. The local authorities in Columbus, Ohio, didn't arrest him, didn't charge him. I understand that all of us should have a problem with that based on the report that I read to you this past Friday, which highlighted the details on 3 separate days. And when we come back from commercial, I'll make sure I read it for you. My man Nuno and John will get me a copy of that report again because I don't have it in front of me. What I'm saying to you, Kevin, however, is this. Are we comfortable with the NFL being in the business of defining and attaching guilt in terms of your transgressions more so than the local authorities? Are we comfortable with a sports league wielding that kind of power? Because I think that's what they did here in the case of Ezekiel Elliott. Your answer to that is what?
I'm not comfortable on how the NFL has taken matters in their own hands.
Okay.
I'm not at all.
Okay.
And I know it seems like, I'm playing both sides of the fence.
No, you're not, because we're both on the same page. Because we both agree that Ezekiel Elliott should be suspended based on the report. But we also have to recognize that the report was essentially released by the NFL to buffer their argument to justify the 6-game suspension.
And to do something as stupid as he did in that parade.
Yes.
By lifting.
But they swear it had nothing to do with the 6 games. That's what
they're
say.
Lying. They're lying.
Okay.
But they're lying. They take that and sell it to somebody else.
Okay.
Ezekiel Elliott, and I'm going to leave it like this.
Mm-hmm.
He did it. He knows he did it. The one thing you said in the report, the girl called her mother up. Where was the mother? Why didn't the mother get her up out of that situation?
How about
That's
that?
another story.
That's another story for another day. But we're dealing with Ezekiel Elliott. And Kevin, you're right on the money, Kevin. I can't knock you. I can't disagree with you. I can't.
She should have said, "Baby, I'm coming to get you."
Yeah.
Ezekiel Elliott needs help.
Yeah.
I thank you for the time, Stephen A. Smith. God bless you.
God bless. 866-729-ESPN. More the Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio in a minute.
Guess what?
You're in the middle of the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
Damn it, I mean it!
In that conversation, my man Kevin in New Jersey felt compelled to read some of this letter from the National Football League to Ezekiel Elliott upon giving him a 6-game suspension. Their findings, here's what they say. Based on the entire record, the credible evidence establishes that on multiple occasions during the week of July 16th, 2016, you used physical force against Miss Thompson, resulting in her injury, specifically as follows. These are the findings of the National Football League, by the way. These are not the findings of law enforcement officials in Columbus, Ohio. No police report or anything like that. These are the findings of the National Football League. And here is what they say. During the early morning hours of July 17, 2016, there was an altercation at the Canvasback Lane apartment in Columbus, Ohio, in which you used physical force that caused injuries to Miss Thompson's arm, neck, and shoulders. These injuries are portrayed in several photographs confirmed by forensic analysis to have been taken by Miss Thompson, the following day and subsequently sent to her aunt with a text message stating abusive. Several of these injuries are also portrayed in photographs taken by the Columbus Police Department. On July 22nd, 2016. Some of these injuries are also depicted in photographs provided by the Thompson family to the Columbus City Attorney's Office on July 22nd. Collectively, a review of those photographs by both medical experts determined that the injuries to her arms, neck, and shoulders appear recent and consistent with Ms. Thompson's description of the incident as they occurred, and how they occurred, rather. That's one incident, July 17th. On the morning of July 19th, there was an altercation at the Canvasback Lane apartment in which you used physical force that caused injuries to Ms. Thompson's face, arms, wrist, and hands. These injuries are portrayed in photographs confirmed by forensic analysis to have been taken by Ms. Thompson on the afternoon of July 21st and concurrently sent via text message to her mother. These injuries are also portrayed in the photographs taken by the Columbus Police Department. A review of these photographs by both medical experts determined that the injuries displayed appear recent and consistent with Ms. Thompson's description of the incident and how they occurred. That's the first one was July 17th. Here was July 19th. Both times her mother and family members also received text messages and photos of her injuries and sent them to the police. There's a third. During the early morning hours of July 21st, there was an altercation at the same place, the Canvasback Lane apartment, in which you used physical force that caused injuries to Ms. Thompson's face, neck, arms, knee, and hips. Ms. Aaron Mason stated in her interview that she observed these injuries to Ms. Thompson later that day. These injuries are portrayed in a photograph taken by Ms. Thompson on the afternoon of July 21st. Blah, 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 blah. And then it goes on to say, our decision. You are hereby suspended without pay for the six regular season games, subject to appeal. You must have no further adverse involvement with law enforcement and must not commit any additional violations of league policies. In that respect, you should understand that another violation of this nature may result in your suspension or potential banishment from the National Football League. Additionally, you are directed to engage a qualified professional in consultation with the league and your current club to arrange a clinical evaluation. Should counseling or treatment be recommended, you will be expected to comply with those recommendations. You also will provide contact information and any necessary releases to allow our office to monitor your compliance with the evaluation and any follow-up care, including meeting with you and any treating clinicians as appropriate. These steps are intended to assist you in addressing proactively the issues revealed during the course of this investigation. So basically, you want him to seek professional help. If it devolves into the clinical variety, so be it, and they will monitor it accordingly. That's basically what they're saying here. You know one question, Nuno and John, and to my listeners out there that nobody asked, that I find to be a very, very important question on all of this? The Canvasback Lane Apartments, is that where he lived or where she lived? Isn't that an interesting question? Because if you are home and this person has called you 50 times and she's hacked your emails, obviously it may be a bit excessive. And if she's now showing up to your home and you're swearing that you never hit her, then what happened? Why are those marks on her body? What if Ezekiel Elliott says, I never hit her, I grabbed her, and I had to pull her out of my apartment? You see how this could potentially get messy? You see how Ezekiel Elliott can go before the appellate court that is Roger Goodell in the league office and try to make these claims? I don't think it's going to work. I don't think it's going to fly. You know why? Because the NFL office reached out to me personally and told me that Zeke and his representatives were not cooperative and forthcoming with the information. So their attitude could very well be, we don't give a damn, it's your problem, here's why. Because if indeed you were innocent of all of this, you should have been more cooperative. You were not. That's your problem. But it does make for very interesting discussion. 866-729-ESPN. That's 866-729-3776. I'll tell you what else is very, very interesting. The state of the black athlete, how it's perceived, and whatever validity comes attached to it. You might not know what the hell I'm talking about, but you will know when I replay my final take from First Take today on the radio in just a minute. Don't miss it. Listen up. It's the Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio.
You're listening to the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
Bottom line is that we can't assume anything other than Ezekiel Elliott's guilt based on the preponderance of evidence. But the important point to point out is that, you know, again, that location, I mean, he could, I think in one report it was saying that, you know, he co-signed, Ezekiel Elliott co-signed the automobile for the young lady. He may have been paying, rent on her apartment. Here's the other question, John Nuno. You're a college athlete on a scholarship or whatever. I mean, how are you paying for something? But then again, he did get drafted a few months earlier and might have got some money up front, so that's always a possibility. We just don't know. Whole bunch of questions. By the way, don't think I'm going to forget in hour number 2 to get into what Dante Jones said about Steph Curry of the Golden State Warriors. I'll touch on that a little bit later on in the show as well. But before I get back to the phone calls, I said something about the black athlete and Ezekiel Elliott, and there was a message that I felt compelled to extend to not just the young brothers in the world of professional athletics, but young brothers, period, out there in the world today, and young ladies, particularly from the black community. simply because we're not even a dominant minority anymore. It's just a message that I felt compelled to send, and that's what I did today. Take a listen.
You've got to be twice as good to get half as much. If you're black, you've heard this before. For folks outside of our community, the belief is it has always applied to one's occupation. But in the case of Dallas Cowboys star running back Ezekiel Elliott, guess what? It applies to the breaks one receives in life, too. Being twice as good to get half as much for the black athlete today applies not just to their talents, but their behavior, too. Life is good when you know how to act. When you don't, uh-oh. There's a reason Elliott got 6 games and why Colin Kaepernick has been blacklisted. We don't need to say team owners, executives, coaches, and fans don't want, quote, the inmates running the asylum, because we already know. When it comes to black folks, period, not just a black athlete, exploiting our excellence is a given, but it's usually after establishing control of us, really beforehand. So isn't it time to wake up for a few black athletes to ask, what role do we play in others feeling the need to control us in the first place? If you're Elliott, you can appeal all day, but it doesn't negate the fact that there wasn't one alleged incident of domestic violence connected to your name. There were 5 over the course of 3 separate days. If you're Colin Kaepernick, after initially saying you would continue to kneel for the national anthem until change occurred, didn't you reportedly change your mind? In the end, Elliott will vacillate between apologies and appeals. Kaepernick won't say much because he's looking for a job. What that amounts to are 2 individuals looking to get paid. Surprised? Really? Last checked, those in positions of power are thinking about the same things themselves. And in the end, quite honestly, that may actually end up shining the power brokers in a better light than the athletes themselves. After all, at least they're real and realistic about what the true circumstances of their situations are. When will some of these black athletes do the same? Especially since they're cashing checks instead of cutting them. It's called business, people, and it's time to wake up.
Did I say anything wrong? I sincerely do not think so. When you look at Ezekiel Elliott, when you look at Colin Kaepernick, certainly you have people that's saying, let's get things under control. There is no denying that when it comes to African Americans, folks will put control on us and keeping us in line more so than focus on exploiting our talents and how they can profit off of it. History has proven that. But if you know that, why point the finger at the man or the system? Constantly looking to point the finger of blame in their direction. If you know the game and you've elected to play the game, why not play it well? Ezekiel Elliott put himself in this position, no matter what way we slice it. And that much is inescapable. Nestor in L.A., you're live with Stephen A. Talk to me.
Hey, good morning.
How are you? Go ahead, man.
All right, man. Yeah, I just want to make a point. You know, when he did his apology, part of the big problem is that you don't only have to apologize to the team, to the organization, but the most important thing in an apology is accepting responsibility and showing maturity and showing that this is going to be a learning experience and that turning this into a positive and saying, you know, like, this is going to teach me and make me a better person. I would not even fight the suspension. I would kind of say, you know, I'm going to take this time. I got some problems, you know. I accept responsibility, and I need to deal with them. So, you know, that shows that he is taking responsibilities for his actions. Guilty or not, he put himself in this situation. Whether he is 50% guilty in a relationship, you know, I'm sure she's guilty too, you know. I'm sure she did some things that didn't go right and made the situation what it is.
Makes sense. I got where you're coming from, and I appreciate the call, buddy. Thank you so much. Let's go to Kevin. You're live with Stephen A. Go ahead, Kev.
Hey, Stephen.
Yes, sir. You're live on the air, buddy. Go ahead.
Hey, girl, I just want to make 2 quick points real quick. As a black man, you gotta know that if he did all that stuff that they saying he did, it's in the police reports, the police going to lock him up 9 times out of 10.
Right. Well, let me say this to you. The police, they did not arrest him, and the prosecutor said that he couldn't pursue the case because of inconsistencies. Go ahead.
There you have it right there.
Okay. But
there
you
have it.
But you also – hold on, Kevin. But you also know that the NFL, it's in their bylaws. They do not have to meet the burden of proof that law enforcement officials have to meet. The NFL is a private industry. You've elected to play in their league, and they've told you they'll investigate matters, but things are at the discretion of the commissioner, and the players signed off on in their collective bargaining agreement.
Right. Hey, I can't argue with that. I just had that quick point. I just wanted to make one more quick point to you.
Go ahead, man. Go ahead.
I just wanted to let you know about this LeBron and Kyrie stuff. Kyrie's tripping. He needs to stay there. If he stay there, we're going to get another chip next year. So he better stay there unless we can get somebody like –
Stop right there. How you going to get another chip just because Kyrie stayed there if you stand pat? Because y'all added Derrick Rose?
I mean, Derrick Rose is a little washed, but he ain't too bad. But I believe in LeBron. LeBron's the GOAT. Hey, I've been hearing you dissing my boy LeBron like crazy, man. Stay ease up off of him a little bit, man.
So you didn't hear my final take yesterday when I praised him. You don't hear me saying that he's the best player in the world
every day.
I mean, you whining, bro. I mean, what you want me to do? Buy him some Kleenex or something? Give him a massage? I mean, damn. I compliment him enough. I compliment him enough, Kevin.
You're right, though. Hey, you the man, Stephen A. I love you, man. Keep doing your thing.
Man. I appreciate it. Thanks so much. I mean, you got these sensitive folks out here wanting to come to LeBron's defense. I'm not trying to feel that. Not trying to feel it at all. LeBron's the best player in the world. He's also somebody that's 1-3 in his last 4 NBA finals and could easily be 0-4. Easily. So let's call it what it is. If it wasn't for Adam Silver's stimulus package, where he suspends Draymond Green, and then ultimately Iguodala and Bogut gets hurt, he might be 0-4 in his last 4 finals. Mr. Trotter himself, NFL reporter and analyst for ESPN, he will be up next to start hour number 2, right here on the Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio.
That's just a sample of what you'll hear on the Stephen A. Smith Show. Weekdays at 1 p.m. Eastern on Sirius XM Channel 80 and the ESPN app.
It's all-pro tight end Rob Gronkowski. And nothing fuels my patented Gronk spike like all-natural Alberto beef jerky. Lean beef, slow-cooked, and seasoned to perfection. It's all-natural and all delicious. Don't take a chance with some wimpy snack. Go with protein-packed, all-natural Alberto beef jerky.
Alberto beef jerky. You get out what you put in.
Refers to Alberto's all-natural line of beef jerkies. Minimally processed, no artificial ingredients.
This is the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
I'm Stephen A. Hour number 2 of the Stephen A. Smith Show, here with you until the top of the hour. Here with you for the next hour over the airways of ESPN Radio, Sirius XM, Channel 80. My honor and privilege to have my next guest on the line. Contributes a lot to NFL Live. NFL reporter extraordinaire for ESPN. Does an exceptional job for us. Love the work that he does. I'm talking about the one and only Jim Trotter. You can catch him at Jim Trotter _NFL. He's right here live with yours truly on the Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio. What's going on, Jim? Good afternoon, man. Good morning. How you doing?
How you doing, Stephen A? I'm doing well.
I'm doing all right. Listen, man, I'll get into this Ezekiel Elliott stuff with you in just a moment, but I'm looking at one of your tweets, within the last hour or so, and somebody asked you about Kaepernick, and essentially you said you've spoken to others, as in players and stuff like that, who's also been in contact. They'd like to see him stand up for himself so they can stand alongside him. What's the mentality of players right now as it pertains to Colin Kaepernick? What's going on with him? What can you tell us?
Well, there are a number of players who support his position and will even support him if he wants to fight what's happening to him now or speak out on it. The problem is, as they've said it to me, let me give you the background on it.
Sure.
So I had been particularly critical, saying, where are the player voices in this? Why aren't they standing up for Colin Kaepernick not having a job? And so after I said that, I reached out to a few of the players who have been supportive of him publicly. And I asked the question, why aren't more players standing up for Colin? And they said to me in so many words, and some directly, it's hard to stand up for him when he won't stand up for himself. And I said, what do you mean by that? And they said, it would be good to hear from him. And they said they've spoken to him, and when they ask him, what's his plan, what can they do, all he does is give them or thank them for the support, but there's nothing beyond that. And so then the perception becomes, do they care more about what is happening to him than he cares himself, in that he has not spoken out on it? So these players would like to hear from him in terms of what can they do to help him, but they have not gotten that direction.
Why do you think they haven't received that direction from him? Why all of a sudden do you believe, knowing the NFL the way that you do, why Colin Kaepernick has been so quiet over the last several weeks or months?
Truly, Stephen A., none of us can answer that. We know he's spoken to people off the record, but he has not spoken on the record. And so from that standpoint, it would be foolish of me to try and get inside of his head and say exactly what he's thinking or what his strategy is here, because truly no one knows the end game right now except for Colin. And, until he comes out and says something, these players who do support him, and I keep stressing that, they do support him, they don't know what steps to take at this point until they hear from him. So really it all comes back to him. Now, we can talk about what's going on in the league and certain owners who feel certain ways, or certain coaches or GMs who feel certain ways. But again, until Colin comes out and says something about his position and how he feels about it and what action he would like to take, if any, these players feel like they're in a tough position.
Jim Trotter, NFL reporter extraordinaire for ESPN, right here with Stephen A. on ESPN Radio. Let's go team by team for a second. If Colin Kaepernick doesn't wear that Fidel Castro T-shirt from months ago when the 49ers visited Miami, once Ryan Tannehill went down, is Colin Kaepernick in the Miami Dolphins uniform as far as you're concerned?
No, I don't think so. I think the reality is that at this point, Adam Gase is still in an uncertain situation with the Dolphins, and people know the Dolphins owner Stephen Ross talks regularly to Jim Harbaugh, and a lot of people are trying to connect the dots about whether or not Harbaugh, if he does go back to the NFL, is going to wind up in Miami. And so if you're Adam Gase and you know that's the background, and if you buy into the conspiracy that something is going on there, then you know you must win now. And Adam feels more comfortable with Jay Cutler, who he had 2 years ago running his system. If you bring in Colin, Adam has to teach Colin his system and everything else. And that's not to say that Colin can be successful in it, but it is to say that it would probably take him longer to be successful in it than it will take Jay Cutler. And so that's one of those situations where I don't buy into it. Now, I do think that if the organization, not Adam Gase, but the organization had brought in Colin, I do believe that would have been a tough situation because of the T-shirt and knowing the Cuban and Cuban-American community in South Florida.
34%.
No doubt about it.
34%, yep.
Yeah, no doubt about it. But I don't think that that's what was behind, them signing Jay Cutler at this point. And the other thing, look, let's give some credit here. We talk about these owners as if they're all of one mind. Stephen Ross, the owner of the Dolphins, has been one of the more socially conscious owners in the NFL. His Rise initiative speaks to some of the injustices that are going on in our country. So I don't want him being lumped in with some of these other conservative owners who really would not like to see Colin on a team.
Jim Trotter, you're absolutely right. I mean, that Rise initiative with Stephen Ross is something special that he's doing. I had the pleasure of talking to him a little more than a year or so ago, and we talked a little bit about that. You're absolutely right. Jim Trotter, right here with Stephen A. on ESPN Radio. Let's go to the Baltimore Ravens. If Colin Kaepernick's girlfriend hadn't put out the tweet comparing Steve Bisciotti, the owner for the Baltimore Ravens, along with former star, future Hall of Famer Ray Lewis, with the Leonardo DiCaprio and Samuel L. Jackson characters in the movie Django, a slave owner and a house you know what. If she hadn't done that, would Colin Kaepernick be in a Baltimore Ravens uniform?
It's more likely. Let's put it that way. It's sad about the Ravens situation that Steve Bisciotti feels he needs to go out and take the pulse of his fans. these owners don't care about fans. I mean, let's be real here. If owners cared about fans, there wouldn't be 3 teams relocating in 2 years. So to say that they're listening to fans, owners listen to money. That's the bottom line with them. And I'm not criticizing them for them. I'm just stating a fact that that's the reality. That's what they react to. And so if they feel that something is going to hurt their bottom line, they are going to then take certain actions on it. So it was sad for me to hear Bisciotti say, I need to go out and talk to all these other folks. Talk to your football people. Talk to your head coach. Do what's best for your organization. If they feel that they can manage Colin being on that team, then you sign Colin. But to say you're not going to do it because this group has spoken out on it, at times I wonder, Stephen A., to be quite frank, where are Colin's supporters in terms of being so vocal and contacting teams and saying we support him being on this team? Mm-hmm. You hear from one side, and so they're allowed to control the narrative on this. Colin has an awful lot of supporters, not only fans, but in law enforcement, in the military, who are on his side here. Where are they speaking out on this in terms of contacting owners like Steve Bisciotti and saying we don't have a problem with it?
Fair question, Jim Trotter, but let me go to this point. When we think about what transpired in Charlottesville this past weekend, the tragedy, a 32-year-old woman was killed. A white nationalist group showed up to protest, and there were protesters protesting them. We all know the story that was in the news. We know the look that this nation has at this particular moment in time because of that vitriol and that venom and that hostility. Do you think that puts more pressure on NFL owners, or at least somebody, to make sure that Colin Kaepernick is playing in an NFL uniform this season, simply because the protest, the reasons behind that protest really came shining through all our lenses this past weekend with what happened and what transpired in Charlottesville? What are your thoughts about that?
No, truthfully, I don't think owners think that deeply about it. I don't think they make that connection that they have to have him on here just, for optics' sake, sort of try and bring some sort of calm or something like that. I don't believe that at all. I think it's great that players are stepping forward and connecting the dots on all of these different issues. To have Michael Bennett speak about it on Sunday night, about how, what happened down in Charlottesville as well as what was happening in Seattle and what's been happening in this country was on his heart, and he felt he needed to do something or say something to try and draw more attention to it. But no, I don't think owners think that deep on it, that they're saying we got to get Colin on a roster to try and show that we don't stand for these things that we're seeing in the country today.
Jim Trotter, let's transition to Ezekiel Elliott and his 6-game suspension by Roger Goodell. Were you surprised at all, and what do you think will come of his appeal?
Yeah, I was surprised at the length of it, but let me give you, and this is a personal opinion, this is not a professional opinion. When we talk about Ezekiel Elliott and the letter that the league put out and how it was meticulous in terms of outlining why it took the steps that it took, I'm of the mind that if all of that is true and if all of that is accurate, he should have gotten a hell of a lot more than 6 games. 6 games is the baseline. They can go up or down depending on what evidence or lack of evidence that they have.
They could go down, Jim? I didn't know they could go down. I knew they could go up. I didn't know they could go down.
Look at Josh Brown. They gave him 1 game. So, yes, they have in there, it's written that 6 games is the baseline.
Got it.
And then it's from there, it's based on mitigating circumstances, which means it can be more or it can be less. We saw it was less with Josh Brown, which makes no sense to me. Right. But having said that, if all of those things are true as written in that letter, in my opinion, Ezekiel Elliott should have gotten more than 6 games. To me, there should be a zero tolerance for drinking and driving and for putting your hands on a woman. That's just the way I feel. That's my background, and people can disagree with me. So I thought it was lenient if that's true. Now, having said that, we've yet to hear from Ezekiel's side in terms of countering what the league has put out there. In my opinion, where is this going to end up? It's going to end up in court like so many other cases that have gone on in the NFL. And ultimately, I think that the courts will rule on behalf of the league. Yeah. Because, unfortunately, the players have given Roger Goodell too much power, and I don't see it changing until we get to the next CBA negotiation.
But do you think that it's a good look for Ezekiel Elliott to fight on this matter? It's one thing for Tom Brady to fight a suspension based on deflated footballs. It's another thing entirely for Ezekiel Elliott to fight. If there's a shred of guilt that can get attached to him, and we suspect that it is it wise for him to fight this matter and keep it in the mind's eye of everybody, considering the allegations that have been leveled against him?
Stephen, if you did it, you don't fight it. If you didn't do it, then you fight for your name.
I agree with that.
That's what I believe.
I agree with that. Jim Trotter, always appreciate you, bro. By the way, before I let you go, how Marshawn Lynch going to do this year? How's he going to do this year? How Beast Mode going to do this year?
Beast Mode will do well as long as he stays healthy, and that's what always concerns me when you have a 30-year-old back who sat out a year who comes back. Traditionally, it's going to be tough to stay healthy, but if he does, he's going to do very well.
You know, I think the Steelers are going to be special as well if Martavis Bryant can stay off the weed. I'm concerned, Jim Trotter. I'm concerned. But with them, I think they can make some noise.
No, they're a talented team. I said a year ago I thought they were going to go to the Super Bowl, and that was before Martavis got or was not reinstated. So there's no question. There's a lot of talent there, and they definitely have the ability to go. The one thing I would caution you on, every team has an Achilles heel, and it's all about matchups, and the Steelers never or rarely play well against the Patriots if that matchup comes off.
Well, I
think they're 3-10, if I remember right, since 2000.
I got to admit to you, I think it's going to be a rematch of Atlanta and New England for the Super Bowl.
I wouldn't put that past you. I think Atlanta's loaded, and I think getting Dontari Poe to go with Grady Jackson in there, getting back Desmond Trufant, and from what I'm hearing down there from those guys, they think this offense is even going to be more potent this year than it was a year ago. I absolutely can see them getting back.
Jim Trotter, keep up the great work, buddy. As always, man, thanks so much for taking that time out of your schedule. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate you having me.
All right, man. One and only Jim Trotter of ESPN, NFL reporter extraordinaire, right here with Stephen A. on ESPN Radio, 866-729-ESPN. That's 866-729-3776. Back to your phone calls and more in a minute with Stephen A. ESPN style.
Okay, Kevin, for the grand prize of $1 million, what color is the White House?
I know this.
5 seconds.
Oh, switching to Geico could save you a bunch of money on car insurance?
Okay. Judges? That's true, Kevin. They'll allow it. Congratulations. You're a winner.
Woo! Geico, because saving 15% or more on car insurance is always a great answer.
You're listening to the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
Phones we go back here on the Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio. Let's go to Raphael in New York. You're live with Stephen A. What's up?
How are you, Russ? Stephen A., thank you so much. I'm honored for you to have me on your radio show. You're one of the best reporters I've ever got to witness, expressing one of the best opinions in the country. Anyway, my thing is that given the circumstances with Ezekiel Elliott, okay, yes, there were possibly evidence, but they've never pressed charges against him. But I think the kid, since college up to the present time in the NFL as a professional, he should have been taught and been advised, if you're going to become a professional, you have to set an example because you're going to become an ambassador, not only.
Well, wait a minute. Here's what I don't like about that position. It passes the buck to somebody else. He had Urban Meyer as a coach at Ohio State. He has parents. His father has spoken publicly proclaiming his innocence. You have teachers and professors and things of that nature. Who's to say that they did not counsel him and he's just hard-headed and wouldn't listen?
True. You're absolutely right about that. I was unaware of that, and I do apologize. But in this case, I would have given him the benefit of that and put him on probation. Then, if he commits a mistake where he is brought up on charges, then suspend.
Stop right there.
And more.
Stop right there. I understand that you as a man would have done that. What if you were the NFL commissioner And it's the aftermath of Ray Rice and Greg Hardy and Ray McDonald, and now you had to modify your policy on behavior and domestic violence because the world is watching. Advertisers and sponsors are mandating that you address the issue, and you have women everywhere, including women that you've brought into the league office that get to monitor and supervise and play a part in a decision-making process. What would you have done then if you were the commissioner as opposed to just being Raphael from New York?
Right. As the commissioner, I would have called them in. I said, okay, I want to have a serious talk with you, your representatives.
Stop right there. Stop right there. They did do that. And what they're proclaiming is that Ezekiel Elliott and his representation were not as forthcoming as they could have been, and they provided resistance, which contributed to the penalty they handed down.
Wow. No wonder. Well, you know what, kid? As far as I'm concerned, you have to take the you got to take the penalty. If I was him, like Mr. Trotter just mentioned, it could have been more severe. That's lenient compared to what he should have received. And I respect the gentleman's opinion that I just heard you on the radio with. Then if that's the case and you resisted, and then they have evidence that you have gotten physical with the lady, as well as all the altercations in the past, and you know what, son? I was willing to give him the benefit of that. I was unaware of that. But in this case, you know what, Stephen A., he deserves the penalty that they're giving him.
I got you. I got to run. I appreciate the call, man. Call back anytime. Solomon in L.A., you're live with Stephen A. Talk to me.
Thanks, Stephen. I find it what MLB did. In other words, there's
Solomon, stop it right there. You went out for a quick second. My audience didn't hear you. Start your point over, please.
Okay. I feel that this is similar to what
Solomon, we lost you. Call back, and I'll put you on. But your signal's bad right now. Call back, and I'll put you right on. I promise. Michael in New Jersey, you're live with Stephen A. Real quick, Michael, go ahead.
Hey, how you doing, sir? Nice to talk to you, Stephen. You're a hard man to get in touch with. But I just wanted to bring up a name that you haven't mentioned too much before I get to my quick Michael Jordan being at least top 3 influential black person on that list.
Sure.
Larry Doby, who endured a lot of racism.
Absolutely.
And I listen to you a lot, and I never hear that name. My father thinks he's top 3 black players that ever played the game, and with Michael Jordan, the influence he had.
Whoa. You can't just gloss over that. Let's stop at Larry Doby for a quick second here.
Yes, sir.
Jackie Robinson integrated the sport of Major League Baseball in 1947. Soon after, it was Larry Doby.
And no one talks about him, and he endured so much racism in different places of the country, and he endured it worse than Jackie Robinson in a lot of places.
Well, I wouldn't know that. That I would not know, but
my father was around at the time and told me a lot about it. So.
Okay.
But I just, I listen to you. I watch First Take all the time when I can. Listen to you on the radio all the time. It's the first time, and it's a pleasure talking to you. And the Michael Jordan point I was going to bring up is, I know I'm an Irish man. My best friend's black. I got a lot of black friends, and most of my friends are black. And when I was thinking about it the other day, I tried calling in. That's why I'm bringing it up. How Michael Jordan, he was number 1. Maybe he didn't deserve to be number 1 to y'all, but the reason why I think we had a black kid living with us that was about 7 years older than me for 12 years, didn't have a place to go. And he made me love Michael Jordan. I'm all local. I'm Jets, Yankees. And thank God I'm not a Knicks because I'm a Bulls fan. I know you're a Knicks fan. But Jordan did it he had an influence without speaking, in the sense that by him playing basketball and having the heart he did, kids that were growing up on the street, and I've been around Irvington, I've been a lot of places that are selling drugs and everything. Instead of doing that, they look at Michael Jordan, they say, hey, maybe I could be someone like this. He was the first player that influenced without speaking, in the sense, just by him playing and doing what he did, all these kids wanted to come out from the ghetto, and they wanted to start playing basketball. They wanted to start doing this. And how many kids probably
I'm going to stop you right there. I'm going to stop you right there. There's plenty of kids that wanted to play basketball. Basketball was easier. Basketball's cheaper. You understand? And so I disagree with you there. Michael Jordan was electrifying, and you marveled at his greatness. If you were a Chicago Bulls fan, you didn't have to be convinced to love Michael Jordan. You damn near deified him because he's the greatest ever, and he played for your team. And as it pertained to everything else, the bottom line is, if you want to really talk about the impact of Michael Jordan, here's what it is. We lived in a different times. The advent of social media had not arrived yet. This guy was a global iconic figure and brand, and he was able to become that because he not just played the part, he looked the part. And he had to do things a different way than the LeBron James and others are able to do it today. With the amount of money available to be had out there, with the influence that they can resonate as global iconic professional athletes, the bottom line is that Michael Jordan paved the way for a lot of these guys, and that's where his true significance lies. Michael, I've got to run. I appreciate the call. Thank you so much. 866-729-ESPN. More of your calls in a minute. I'll make sure to get Solomon right back on the line when we come back. You are listening live to the Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio.
Guess what? You're in the middle of the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
Damn it, I mean it!
Ladies and gentlemen, when you get an opportunity, please go to the site, theundefeated.com. Once again, theundefeated.com. And there on the front page of The Undefeated, it says the NFL has a Kaepernick problem that's bigger than just Colin Kaepernick. The author of that article is yours truly, Mr. Stephen A. Smith. Please feel free to go and read it on theundefeated.com. I'll leave it to that, and we'll discuss that column and more tomorrow. As promised, back to the phone. Solomon, I hope your signal is clear this go round. Are you there, sir?
Yes, sir. How we doing now?
I'm all right. Go ahead, buddy.
Good. I just feel that, the NFL is doing a similar pendulum swing like MLB did, okay? Before they got caught with their hands in the cookie jar, Major League Baseball basically practically sanctioned PEDs. They got caught, and now you've got a point where you better not have a protein drink with the wrong vitamin in it, or you're up for suspension possibly. NFL, they had the Ray Rice incident, didn't look good, so they're going to make sure they're going to swing that pendulum. And like you pointed out, they have a right to do it, but they're going to swing that pendulum to the situation here. Well, no charges, no convictions, allegations. You know what? Good enough. We don't need the headache. You're going down 6
games. What's scary about it, Solomon? They don't even care whether they're right or not. They just don't want to be wrong for the wrong reasons.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
And
they'd rather be wrong. If they'd rather be wrong with Zeke than be wrong with the alleged victim.
Yeah,
that's basically what they're saying. That's basically what they're saying.
Sure. They want to cover their what.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree with you, Solomon.
Listen,
good call.
Thanks, bro. You got it.
Thank you, Alex in Brooklyn. You're live with Stephen A. What's up, Alex?
Hey, Stephen A. How are you?
I'm all right. Talk to me, man.
Yeah, I just want one point and then one question. I mean, the point on Ezekiel Elliott, I think this goes out to all NFL players in general and all players, I think, of sports in general. I mean, let's take a look at, I guess, these players. I mean, were offered a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I mean, how many people instead of them died for that opportunity, killed themselves in all way processes and weren't able to make it to the NFL? So in my opinion, a young guy like Ezekiel Elliott, this could teach him a great lesson of how you should really cherish your
I agree with you, Alex. I don't disagree with you, but can I ask you a couple of personal questions? And I promise there's nothing offensive. I just need clarity, okay?
Yeah, everyone makes mistakes.
Listen, I get you. I totally get where you're coming from. Are you a white individual?
Yes.
Can I ask you a question? What do you say to people who would ask the question, why don't we have the same attitudes towards actors in Hollywood, billionaire brokers on Wall Street or people like that? Why is it always the athlete, particularly the black athlete, that is perceived as needing to be so appreciative of the position that they're in, where you got folks making $20 million a film, or you got people making $1 million a day trading on Wall Street or anything like that? I'm just asking a very innocent question from your perspective. I'd like you to share that with me.
Yeah, I guess from my perspective, I mean, in terms of like entertainment in general, I definitely understand your point there. But I would say this, that players in the NFL, I mean, they're public figures, as well as people on Wall Street, as well as actors in general. I just feel like sports in general is such a public thing that's, predominantly dominant with, football and basketball, predominantly dominant with African-American athletes. So what I would say is that there definitely is a race factor in there. But, I just, from my perspective, I don't look at the color. I more or less look at, the incident at hand. So I guess I just wanted to say, whatever happened with Michael Vick, I mean, the guy was on top of the world. He was on top of the league and the whole nine. But guess what? He made a mistake, and it was a terrible mistake. He paid for his mistake. But what I'm trying to say is that these players need the league a lot more than the league needs these players.
Well, and you know why I think you're wrong? The only reason I say this respectfully, Alex, I think you're wrong because if it weren't for these players, how successful would the league be in being an attractive commodity? It's about supply and demand. If you weren't able to marvel at these athletes, how interested would you be in them, in the sport?
Yeah, that's true.
You know what I'm saying?
Definitely have,
I mean, it's a give and take and whatever. I do understand what you're saying, and generically speaking, you're absolutely right, and there's no two ways about it. It's just that the flip side to it is that it's not like they don't bring anything. The value that they bring to the equation is why the sport is so profitable. I mean, think about it.
That's right.
What has Roger Goodell, and I respect the hell out of Roger Goodell. I truly do. What has Roger Goodell done to earn $44 million a year, as he did 2 years ago?
Yeah, not much.
$44 million? $44 million. He ain't got to get on the field. He ain't got to score a touchdown. He ain't got to record a sack. Nothing. What has he done to warrant $44 million?
Yeah, you're right, Stephen A. And I guess if I could just ask you one more question, because I was curious on your opinion on this. I'm a big Jeff fan, and I don't want to put too much highlight on the preseason game and get all hyped up for no reason at this point. But from your perspective, I mean, if hypothetically speaking, a guy like Christian Hackenberg could potentially, put up over 20 touchdowns, maybe show some sort of light of being successful in the league, is it worth not tanking this season and seeing some development out of him?
Well, I would agree with you there because, but you know what else would it depend on, Alex? Who's available in the draft? If you're going to tank this season, don't we need to see a target? Like, let's say, for example, there's the future Andrew Luck, or there's the future Deshaun Watson, or, somebody big time that's at the quarterback position available in the draft, and the best way for you to get him is to stink up the joint and get the number 1 overall pick. I get you. But if that's not what we're talking about here, and there's no definitive dude that's conspicuous in the mind's eye, why would we want to sacrifice the season with nothing to show for it?
That's right. Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks.
I got to run, man. Appreciate the call. Thank you so much. 866-729-ESPN. Your calls and more to close out the show in a minute with Stephen A. on ESPN Radio.
You're listening to the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
The phones we go. Before we get on out of here for the day, the Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio. Let's go to Cedric in Queens. You're live with Stephen A. Real quick, Cedric. Go ahead, buddy.
Hey, Steve. Thanks for taking my call. I wanted to quickly say in regards to Zeke that this was probably the wake-up call that he needed. I mean, if you look at the number of allegations with the alleged domestic violence, coupled with being alleged to have pulled down, I believe, the top of a woman. This punishment is definitely befitting upon the behavior that this young man, the direction that he was going. Hopefully this can turn him around. And being a former law enforcement officer myself, being retired, when you're in the public eye, you're not only subjected to the rules and regulations of the of society, but also to the rules and regulations of the organization or business that you work for. I mean, this is a lot of my friends were a little confused as to, even though he wasn't arrested for the alleged allegations, why was he levied with the 6-game suspension? It's that personal conduct code is a catch-all, and these athletes have to understand that, whether it was Big Ben or even the owner, Jim Irsay, who was suspended and also fined. You have to understand that when you're out there in the public eye, doesn't matter how much money you have, how much fame you have, we all have a certain level of behavior.
Accountability and behavior that we're held accountable for. You're absolutely right. Cedric, I appreciate the call. You're absolutely right. We all know you're correct. You're right on the money. It's undeniable. Rock, you're live with Stephen A. on ESPN Radio. What's up, Rock?
What's going on, man? Okay, first let me start off with a guilty person won't a guilty person won't let somebody else accuse them of something they didn't do. And then he did it on 5 separate occasions. After the first couple of times, or even the first time it even happened, he should have distanced himself away from her from the first place.
Well, that's why I asked. Hold on. That's why I asked if the apartment he was at or this incidences took place, is that where he lived or she lived? Because if that's where he lived, that means she came to his place, which would explain why there were multiple occasions that the incidents took place on his premises. If it wasn't where he lived, it looks even worse for him, because that means he definitely went to her.
Yeah, true. But Stephen, even though if it's not his place or her place, he still should have distanced himself from that situation. He shouldn't even put himself in that situation.
We agree there. But what I'm saying is that if you home sleep and somebody continues to come to your home, that would explain why you were in that situation. Not the part about putting your hands on her. I'm talking about where she was even in your presence. Well, if she came to your crib, that's where you live.
Yeah, true. And then, Stephen, another thing, too, after when he say supposedly she called him 50 times, he could have took that phone down to the magistrate office and got a restraining order took out on her.
Well, that's what he's saying. That's what they're going to try to say they did, actually. They took out a restraining order and whatever. That's what they're going to try to say in the report. We'll find out. We'll know the truth, Rock, as it goes on. Go ahead.
I got one quick thing, too, to the question you asked about when did Aaron Rodgers blew a game. I think I got you on this one. October 28th, Green Bay was playing Kansas City with Aaron Rodgers, fumbled the ball and got
I'll look that up. Call me back tomorrow about that. I'm not going to let you get away that quickly. Aaron Rodgers, the bad man that he is, you got to come with something better than that. Tracy in Long Island, you're live with Stephen A. Real quick. Tracy, go ahead, buddy.
Hello, Stephen. How are you?
Hey. How are you?
I am well. Long-time listener of your show.
Thank you.
I have a different perspective on the Ezekiel Elliott thing coming from a woman. Now, I know based off of your conversation with your last caller and this being a bunch of men dealing with a black man, as a woman, if a man even acts like he's going to put his hands on me, more or less puts his hands on me, I'm going to distance myself. You don't have to distance yourself from me. I will do it. So I know you guys keep saying, okay, well, it was 5 incidences in 3 days. So you mean after the first time he put his hands on you, allegedly, you went back 4 more times? And if it's correct that she made the statement regarding destroying his career or his life, you are that vindictive of a woman that you are willing to put yourself in a position to have bodily harm put to yourself just to accumulate evidence against someone? I don't understand that. And again, I'm a black woman. I grew up with my fathers, my uncles, my grandfathers. They never had to lay a hand on me. So if any man feels he had a bad day or I'm not listening or something comes up to where he has to put his hands on me, I'm out. Period. So I understand that's more of a sensitive thing coming from a bunch of men. But from a woman, I don't understand how she put herself in a position, whether it was her place and she let him in or she got in her vehicle and drove to his place and wanted to be in. My question is why?
I understand. Tracy, I always appreciate your perspective. Please feel free to call back anytime. Thank you. A woman's perspective? You heard it from her. I don't need to add to that. Kurt in Detroit, you're live with Stephen A. Real quick, Kurt, go ahead.
Hey, Stephen, man, how you doing?
I'm all right, buddy. We only got a couple of minutes left. Go ahead.
Got you. Just to share some information, I lived in Columbus a while. There's been a few of the athletes that get away with murder down there. They do whatever, and they still let them guys get away with it.
All right. Well, you mean get away with crimes? Because even though I understand exactly what you're saying, in this particular climate, especially off the Ezekiel Elliott situation, we don't need to use the word murder as just passe. You're not being literal, so let's make sure we point that out. They get away with a lot.
Yeah, they do.
They get away with a lot.
One of their star athletes actually did something real bad and got away with it, but I ain't gonna get into that. I'll move on.
Okay.
Zeke needs to just get to himself, stay to himself, and be that way versus trying to be out in the public and be out and about. It's causing too much confusion for the young man. Obviously, he hasn't had a whole lot of guidance or something ain't right, but I just wanted to call and say that, man.
All right.
Ohio State, they will let you get away with murder up there.
I got you. I appreciate the call, man. Thank you so much. One of the other things that I didn't point out, and I didn't get into much today, other than Steph Curry, Dante Jones saying that he's not a top 5 player, not a top 10 player. Dante Jones needs to get drug tested. You got to be kidding me. Steph Curry's top 5. Best shooter I've ever seen, number 1. Number 2, Roger Goodell, talking about he approves of protests as long as it's done right in the right timing. The only thing that I'm going to say about that is this. Protests are meant to be an inconvenience. It's not meant to be pleasing to people. And if you are an oppressor, whoever you are, what right do you have to dictate what the oppressed should do, particularly when you want to be the one convenienced? It doesn't make sense. I didn't want to get into that too much today, but it still needed to be said. I'll talk to y'all 22 hours from now. It's Stephen A. signing off. Until then, peace and love.
That's just a sample of what you'll hear on the Stephen A. Smith Show.